All right, let's get this started.
Let's get this started. Let's get this over with.
Can't wait.
Paraphrasing.
Yeah. I'm going to talk today about a great and powerful Ian Tibbetts here.
Large. Intimidating.
Now it is.
Yeah.
I'm slightly more positive.
I'll shut up. All right.
The director of School of Biological Sciences International Programs. He's worked in Quandamuka country for over 30 years and the Solomons for 15. Is that right? He's director of the Moreton Bay Foundation and chairs the scientific expert panel advising the Queensland government on its sustainable fisheries strategy. And I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, that's enough. All right, no worries. So, anyway, thank you for the invitation to speak. I said yes at a weak moment. And I actually couldn't remember what I was going to, when the reminder came through, I couldn't remember what I was going to talk about originally, the original one. Then Tamara the other day reminded me, originally before I sent the abstracts out, that I was going to talk about the International Programs Unit and some of the things we do. But then this kind of builds into that a little bit. I'll explain some of the history behind the way my thinking's developed and lead you through a little bit of my part. There's a couple of pictures in there, but not a lot. It's basically a chat and discussion, and I'm hoping to learn here, all right? I'm just saying some things about the way I've come to understand the responsibility of research and teaching activity in country, all right? So this is my personal perspective. There's no sort of guruism here. I'm going to press this. All right, so Solomon Islands, you know where it is, PNG up here, and actually not anymore really, is it? This is Bougainville. This is, soon to get its own country status, which is marvellous because Bougainville actually has a lot more in common. The people of Bougainville have a lot more in common with the people of Solomon Islands than they do the other way around. Right? So really interesting place. Absolutely love it to bits. We're working there. We work mainly in two areas in the Western Province. So this is Guadalcanal, right, the main island. The capital, Honiara, sits on the north there. And so in the old days, it's flying to Honiara and then from the international airports, and then walk around the corner, trundle your case around the corner to the domestic terminal, which is about this size, and then that would have flights all over the country. And our initial work was in an area called Morovo Lagoon in the Western Province, all right? So that's where we first started work. So I really got a deep fascination with Western Province focus and activity. So just a background on that work. Here's Morovo Lagoon. It's distinguished by having a double barriers reef system. Right? So it's a unique feature in the world, and any unique feature in the world tries to get World Heritage listing. All right? So the locals here were interested in getting World Heritage listing for Morovo Lagoon. It's a pretty fascinating site. When we started working there, this is Gatakai down here. This is Vangadu Island here. And these two islands are sort of sit core on to Morovo Lagoon. So I've been sort of doing international liaison for the Centre for Marine Studies, as it was then. And part of my international liaison was sort of meeting with folks who had some interest in things abroad. And one of these was a proponent of the World Heritage listing and I attended several meetings. As an outcome of those meetings, we put in an application to the MacArthur Foundation in the US for funding to support a research project that would take a multidisciplinary team into the lagoon and then try and sort out some ideas about how to maintain the ecologies that were so fundamental to the system. Naively, sitting from here, of course. So that was 15 years ago, so we got that funding through. And it was kind of interesting. So this is the initial MacArthur grant. We're still currently funded by this. So the MacArthur funding has lasted some 15 years. We've probably done about 3 million, 4 million or something or other through it. My involvement was really only in the research sense at the early stage, because I was looking at basically fish and reef health, and I thought, well, of course, trundle in there, have a look at the old reefs, see where they've got some MPA areas, some areas that are restricted access, compare those with some around the villages and that sort of stuff, and try and tell a story to the locals about well, you know, if you want to protect the resources, this is what you've got to do. And there were people working on sediments and, you know, coral health, people working on the catchment and water quality coming into the lagoon. And this is very much a sort of white man flies in and explains it to the locals about how things should go. You know, this is the initial sort of framing mindset. It was like bizarre. Many of you will be totally over this and have healed yourselves of this sort of approach to doing things. Very rapidly, learning sort of kicked in, and it became very, very apparent about ways in which you needed to interact with the local communities over there. So quite early on, you know, so Tanoni Vaka means white man, basically. So if someone refers to you as Tanoni Vaka and you hear a conversation, it means they're talking about you, basically. Right? Tanoni Pai Hana is what they call me, which basically means man on fish. All right, so I was like all over fish. I'd learned all the Morovo names, and there are many, many languages in the Solomon Islands. All right, and every lagoon has its own distinct with integrations of local language. So in Morovo, the word for fish is ihana. As you move up New Georgia into Roviana Lagoon, which is just a day's boat ride away, it's igana. Yeah. So there are subtle changes in names as you go through. And as you will understand, trying to understand natural resources and what are important to people, you have to speak in the local language. Now, Pidgin English, mi kasim little bit pissin, mi galam ting ting, maybe think something resource block, you know. So you have to learn Pidgin to be able to be widely understood in the Solomons, Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, for example. Okay, but that in terms of a conversation only gets you as far as FIS. All right, so FIS, F-I-S, is basically Pidgin for fish. Now, of course, understanding the diversity and functional redundancy among fish populations, you can't just communicate using FIS. So you need to learn the local language names for all those fishes. All right, so there's one I particularly like, which is, you know, the great Maori wrasse, you know, the big hump-headed Maori wrasse, that big thing. So the little ones, so often they will differentiate, names will be differentiated to small versions of something and large versions of something. So the small, young hump-head Maori wrasse, Chelinus undulatus in Latin, are known as Chichikamujiki. And Chichikamujiki in Morovo means bait stealer, little bait stealer, like a little nuisance, all right? And it's the one that comes along and whips the bait, you know, the hermit crab off the hook or whatever and never gets caught. So Chichikamujiki. And there's a whole bunch of other things. Things like kiso is shark, yeah? Vua is crocodile. Great word, you know, great strong words, you know. And then, so being able to communicate is like really, really important. It's an emblem of respect, yeah. So in that sense, that was important. So going from Tanoni Vaka to Tanoni Vahana was really just getting, because fish is so important, or marine resources are so important to these communities, that everyone's happy to chat about fish, all right? So it really became quite an important thing. The other thing was going to church. Now, part of my family is SDA, all right, so Seventh-day Adventist. And in the Solomons, because of the fairly recent and pervasive influence of various folks interested in pushing various forms of biblical understanding of the Bible, virtually every community is deeply religious. All right? They have all sorts of shades of religion, depending upon the history of the folks that went in there to proselytize. In Morovo Lagoon, it's predominantly Seventh-day Adventists, all right? And they Seventh-day Adventists keep Saturday the Sabbath, all right? So Seventh-day Adventists don't work on Sabbath. If you're in the community, you must not work on Sabbath, all right? If you want to do something like going for a dive or a swim or a snorkel or something like that, you do it quietly, yeah, out of the way. All communities, if it's united, you can tell quite quickly from the array of resources about which community it is, all right? So SDAs don't eat shellfish, they don't eat crab, all right? So if you see land crabs, walking around the village, you can bet that's probably an SDA community. You'll find lots of lobsters nearby, you'll see lots of deo, which are the clam, mangrove clam, and there'll be heaps of resources that the SDAs don't touch in their area. As you go to a united village, basically they eat everything. They dance, they play frivolous music, non-biblical music, and they observe Sundays. But the church is a method of accessing the community. And the church is very influential as a meeting place where messages are delivered on protecting resources, messages delivered on education, reminders about paying school fees and the evils of various things. So the church really binds the community together. And if you want to move into a community and start doing research in the community, you need to go to church, basically. You need to suck up on the ideas you have, and I've been the subject of sermons. It's that serious, and then I've been asked about how Queen Elizabeth is, and that sort of, they think I'm thinking for some reason, I don't know why. That is, So the church is really important, and also every meeting that you hold, if you hold a meeting there about maybe there's some research team you want to go and work in an area over there, then basically that meeting has to start with a prayer, right? And you call on the senior village elder or the pastor, if the pastor's there, and say, would you kindly say a prayer to bless this meeting, and then the meeting kicks off with a prayer. And often it will end with a prayer as well. So these are learnings that we get fairly isolated from in our sort of heathen world over here, you know what I mean? So, but over there you're functioning in their country. So respect is about respecting their religion, it's respecting codes of dress. So when I take classes over there, they basically have to dress respectfully, all right? Not wander around in the sorts of gear that some kids wander around in over here. It's definitely against law. The other thing is multidisciplinarity. So I'm not going to go through all the names here, but basically, working in teams over there, it's really, really important to address different aspects of particular research questions, or find somebody who's had experience in that area. People like Simon Albert, for example, has worked throughout the region. He's worked at PNG, Vanuatu, and Solomons, and Fiji and elsewhere. Very well experienced, fluent in Pidgin and a number of local languages, and a range of others, 5 more also strong with the Solomons. So if you do want to go work over there, have a conversation, have a cup of coffee over here first. I learned a huge amount from Annie Ross, who gave a seminar a week or so ago here, a huge amount about how one best deal with, or best engage with communities over there. So then New Georgia, so that was Morovo, and then so 15 years ago, I've been traveling there a lot. And then, there's an anecdote I can tell you, but I don't have time, but anyway, about Munda, and the way I had my head framed about the complexity, how sophisticated various places were. Munda was the site of the second largest battle in the Second World War between the Americans and the Americans, Australians, Japanese, all right? Really big battle. They landed in this top end of New Georgia. This is Vangunu down here, so this is Morovo, just to give you the location, and then up here is New Georgia. The Americans landed up here and then hiked across and attacked the airfield at Munda, where the Japanese had been sort of hiding their planes under coconut trees and that sort of stuff. Massive battle there. But thankfully, the benefit of the Second World War to moving around the Solomons is that all the good airstrips that are in there that were put in by the military, right? So Munda is actually now classed an international airstrip, or international airport. It's fenced all the way around, it's got 24 lights, it's got ambulances and fire engines and that sort of thing. This is a pretty sophisticated outfit. And the 737 now lands there, so you can fly from Brisbane to Munda without having to stage through Honiara, which is a huge relief for us. So Brisbane, Munda, wonderful flight. And then you land there and basically you've got a 737 sitting in a village. All right, so it's amazing. Bizarre. Anyway, so awesome place. I'll show you a couple of photographs in a tip. So backing up a little bit back to 2000, all right? So before the start of the Solomons engagement, I've set up a program with the University of California Education Abroad System, which is focused around marine biology, about 70%, with some terrestrial ecology chucked in and some human cultural kind of stuff. And that's been running ever since, runs annually in the second semester. So it goes to Montenegro Research Station, which is significant for our discussion. All right, so this is not irrelevant or not a non sequitur, it's actually very relevant to our discussion. And I bring a bunch of students out each year to go study over there and do some stuff. Out of that relationship, I was traveling back from Peru a few years ago, and I had to have a copy of the book that Simon Albert, myself and James Udy wrote on the marine life of the Solomon Islands. And I was passing through LA, so I thought I'd just duck up to Santa Barbara, which is about an hour and a half north of LA, and just drop a copy of the book on the desk and say, well, have a think about this, we could do something over there. And they kind of took that And we then developed the Australia Solomon Islands program from that, which takes between 17 and 30 students over the Solomon Islands. And we run a program on community environmental health. So basically it's more, rather than natural systems focus, it's like framed around the community. Yeah? And when they go over there, they're embedded in the community. I usually go over, or a representative goes over the year before, or, or very early in the year, seeks a meeting with the elders, has a prayer to open it, and then asks the community, represented by the elders, about what their research priorities are for their village. Right? So if someone wants to go in there, if we come over here with some equipment, we'll have some machines to go ping, we'll have some stuff that incubate stuff, we've got some microscopes and things. We can basically go and answer whatever questions within our framework you would like us to. What are your research priorities? So then we bring those back, we formulate those into some research group sort of things. We split the students up into groups, and then they start to learn the skills associated with that particular thing. So if it's, for example, food security and sort of food-related health, then there'll be a household survey, for example. We design a survey, get it approved by ethics, and then basically when the students go over, they carry out these household surveys where a whole range of questions are asked, and then those get formulated with a response. So that's basically what it is. And the students go and do homestays in the village, and they basically go and work in the garden and help prepare the food and all that sort of stuff, right? So they're embedded in there. And we also look at a bit of reef and forest health as well, so the natural resource side of things. So that's how we framed it in 2017, and it's run 2017, 2018, it ran this year, and it's definitely going to run next year, and it seems to be trundling out. So remember, this one started in 2000, and it's still going, all right, nearly 20 years later. And then this one's in its fourth iteration is being planned at the moment, so it's going to carry on. So these are some of the areas. This is near Nusa Tuba. Nusa Tuba is a little island on the edge of a extinct volcano called Kolombangara. Kolombangara is a big piece of perfect, wonderful cone, and it's got beautiful rainforest on it, cloud forest and sort of stuff. It's the second highest part of the Solomons. Really wonderful stuff. The resources, some of the folks are putting up with quite strange things. Where we're going here is coming from Nusa Tuba, this little island on the side of Kolombangara, where they have no fresh water. Right? They had a well, but now it's quite close to where the septic system for the Tinoni Vaca toilet is. All right? So there's often Tinoni Vaca toilets. All right? So you go to a place, folks usually just like wander into the lagoon and then have a little bit of a wee or whatever. But when you want to attract Tinoni Vaca, you need to give them a toilet to throw them. All right? Subject to quite fascination among most people. So there's like a European toilet sitting there in a little hut thing, and some toilet paper and that sort of stuff. And of course, then it goes to a septic somewhere. But this is some of the subtle influence we have on communities. So their Tinoni Vaca toilet was very close to their well, and now the well is poisoned. So they now have to get in a canoe. So if they want to wash, if they want to have fresh water, they've got to get in canoes and go for several kilometres to where a stream runs down from the main island of Kolombangara. And we did it as well. When the students and I were over there, we'd basically get in a canoe in the afternoon, we'd load up with our water bottles, we'd go up to this little stream, and this is this young lady sitting on the front of the canoe as we go up the stream towards where the freshwater section is. And then basically we'd soap up and wash and gather water, and then we'd go in the canoe, and we'd stick it back in the canoe, and then back to the village. So, yeah, multiple impacts we have, but an interesting problem for the locals from some of our activity. This is a student doing a household survey in one of the ladies' kitchens. Pretty evocative. This is Sophie Bartley, one of the students from this year. Sorry, this is June this year. This is Regina Cunahan, or Suter rather, she called her Suter. She was a PhD student many years ago, and she's leading the water program. So she's looking at incubations of cultures for E. coli. So we go and sample people's water resources and then find out whether or not they've got fecal contamination in there, and then provide them with ways of overcoming that fecal contamination, different ways of doing things, keeping pets away from water sources and that sort of stuff. dengue. So this is one of the questions that came up from the village was, this is Dunde, another village, that one was Kindu before, this is Dunde. These are 44-gallon drums for fuel and stuff used during the Second World War. They've been used here as a basement for a big concrete slab that then had a large building, a hospital on top of it. Yeah. So this is in Western Province still, where this battle took place during the Second World War. The locals were worried that this was harbouring, leaks and sort of stuff. Water was going into it, was harbouring mosquito, right? The dengue mosquito, and indeed, not these, but these things. When we did the research, we couldn't find any dengue mosquito in here, but certainly coconuts, tin cans, a very small water resource, just very small amounts of water, contained lots of these potentially dengue vector mosquitoes. So this was the 2017 program. So this is important. Okay, so it's important for them to know they're worried about dengue. They thought this was going to drive a dengue outbreak if it happened, but it was actually how they were managing things like coconuts. Yeah. Big piece of information, right? In 2017, research reports were prepared and translated into language, both Moraviana and also Pidgin. And then we made posters, and that took some months to get the information going back. And then it was given to the community some 9 months later. I travelled over there, gave posters out at church and that sort of stuff, and talked to the community about it. That was 9 months after, right? And I had this sort of, these are just hand grenades from the local guy that collects hand grenades, right? So the whole place is like, when they're making a garden over there, so the way they do rotational gardening in tropical forests, okay, they basically, have a sort of bit of a rotational thing, they'll cut some trees down, they'll burn all that stuff, and then they rich soil, and they'll cultivate it until it gets a little bit tired, and then they'll go and cut another area down, right? But so burning is a key part of it, burning the wood that you chop down. But where they've had lots of military action, you've got hand grenades, mortar shells, bombs under there. Basically, they light the fire and then run away. And then when the explosion stops, then they go back and start farming. All right? So it's quite interesting in a way. And also when you're writing up like risk assessments for field trips, they're quite bomb.
Get ethics approval.
Yeah. No, I think So anyway, then I had this kind of epiphany thing, right? Or really like common sense, right? Here we are going into these communities, and we're finding out real-time facts about how their circumstance is. Do you have dengue? Is your water supply polluted? Is your child going to get sick? All right? And here we are spending 9 months translating a language before we get it back to them. And I thought, we ought really to pay respect to actually tell people real time what the issues are, so they can take some action, not wait 9 months for a government report to come out. So we actually now have moved to a situation where this year we trained the kids in Pidgin, right? We got them help with translating stuff for posters, and then they delivered the information they found out back to the community real time as soon as they finished analysing the results. And this is just one of the examples about ecotourism. They're worried about this airport going in and what was the impact on their community was going to be about ecotourism. That was one of the research things they want us to focus on. So this is actually written in, bring Oketa community together, which is easy. It's Pidgin. It means just bring everyone in the community together. Right? Or improve savoir tourism. That's improved knowledge about tourism. Yeah. So the students were learning language to communicate to folks in their language, which is a really important thing. Again, respect. Right? So.
Have you found that people understand graphs well?
It's difficult. One of the challenges early on were maps. Trying to show people maps of an area and point to something or other when the georeference is different, or was different. Now it's changed with the mobile phones. Graphs you have to explain, all right, just carefully, but they get it pretty quickly. I mean, they get these things in school nowadays, so it's fine. But yeah, you've got to be careful about how you're communicating about things.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously instantly were like, make a graph, make a map, but I've also found other places that that's not instantly.
No, not at all. So you've got to build understanding. There's a lot of interest in ways science is done because so many scientists come through. Right, I live in Intrapilli. What time is it, mate, for my language? I live in Intrapilli, right? I can't remember the last time a scientist sort of walked through my backyard studying, well, frogs in my pond. I'd be happy if they did, perfectly fine. I can't remember the last time I sat down and did a household survey. These people see so many scientists come through. Basically, it's part of their income is from researchers or education groups coming through. They support a sizable component of the cash economy over there. Right? So they're used to science. They're quite well framed, particularly in these high-visited areas. If you go to somewhere like Rennell, for example, is way off the beaten track, Rennell Island or Tumotu or one of the other far-flung provinces, that understanding isn't there. So you have to build up what this means. So anyway, I better press on. But yeah, good question. What about back here? All right, I'm visiting people's country. I've been doing it for 30 years. All right, and I've been doing it with some respect, but not full respect, right? So when I was raising money for the research station over at Dunwich, so Moreton Bay Research Station, we went out and raised $1 million from industry to go and help build that. That was back in the 90s. So in 94, 95, I had a series of meetings with the Minjerribah, Morgulpin Elders and Council, that means Stradbroke Highland, Moreton Island Elders and Councils, all the families there, about what they wanted out of the thing that we might do over there. Right? But that was light touch, really. It was, a couple of meetings on the back deck of the research station to try and identify what research activities they wanted to do. And then that faded. You've got to build the thing, and we've got to run the thing, and that sort of stuff. So different priorities took over. It was only really then when I was thinking about the way we engage with communities in Solomons that really that should be the way we engage with communities over here, because we're wandering around their backyard. So, a place they've looked after for 6,000 years. In the recent iteration, 24,000 years if you go to the archaeological records at the moment. Yeah. So the 24,000 years these folks have been looking after marine resources in these areas, terrestrial resources in these areas, it's taken us less than 200 to right up. Right? So, and then we're scratching around how to do it. We've invaded 3 million people sitting on, it's like bizarre scale. And now there is strong pushback, which is, again, respect, it's welcome, right? So what's going on here? So the Nugi are basically on Morgulpin, which is Moreton Island, Nunakal and Gurrumpul, and so basically Stradbroke Island, right, or Minjerribah. So they got a determination, and so now they have some rights over this space. They've got some exclusive rights where basically you need permission to walk on certain parts of the land from them directly, and then there are non-exclusive rights where you've actually got to sort of let them know about stuff, all right, when you're doing a thing in there. They don't have to write a veto over it, but you let them know. So this is the overall claim, stretches up around Moreton Island. Moreton Island is shortly going to be declared, if not already. And then most of the active claim at the moment is around Minjerribah and the bay around there, all right, stretching. This actually stretches down to the Gold Coast if you want to size the scale here, all right. This is a big area of land and sea country. So a big area. The two key agencies, I think, from our perspective, the Quandamooka Yilgarn Aboriginal Corporation, they're the ones vested with the power under that determination to look after that and act it. And then sitting sort of down to the side of the Quandamooka Aboriginal Land Sea Management Agency, POLSMAR. POLSMAR is led by Darren Cameron. Cameron Costello leads Kayak, basically, and then Darren Cameron leads POLSMAR. POLSMAR look after the rangers, which look after sea and land country on Minjerribah. All right. So these folks are really critical. These folks are very good at gentle politics. These folks can be very direct, as they should be, all right, about what's important for them, and it's about respecting access to the country. Right? So that's really the main message here. So these are the two agencies, Kayak and POLSMAR. So Kayak has a set of protocols. They've had these protocols for a number of years now. Basically, these are the general ones about if you want to visit, then 2 weeks beforehand, let them know you want to come over, all right, or enter that part of Moreton based on determination. So dignitaries have some rules there, as UQ has rules about inviting dignitaries. Decisions, they need to be involved in decisions about stuff. So if you're putting together some thing that's going to be a submission somewhere or other, what I do now is actually reference them and send a copy to Kayak, so they understand what I'm intending to do. I've got a proposal about a certain thing. So, for example, with the Toondah Harbour issue that came up, the terms of reference were made available from the Federal Minister, and I put in a submission to that, and then copied in, before we sent it across to the lead agencies of Kayak, and then got them to, so they are aware of what we were going to suggest, and they actually suggested some things we could add on behalf of the sort of cultural system, so in terms of leverage there. So policy and planning, any of those things, they need to be involved. Then this, everyone knows about this document, Toward a Glad Tomorrow. Has everyone read this? No? It's important. It's a MOU between the University of Queensland and Kayak, all right? A specific MOU that's going to describe how we interact. So MOUs, Memoranda of Understanding, are largely descriptive, and they are often seldom prescriptive. So they will mention elements, but there will be not a lot of substance around those things. It's for individuals to take those up and use that under the MOU. So, Toward a Glad Tomorrow. If anybody wants me to send around copies of these, I'm happy to send you around protocols and other things. So UQ, what does UQ want? Collaborative and impactful research and teaching opportunities. Work integrated learning for students. So particularly, I'm thinking here for master's students who might have an interest in working in communities, then this would be a very good sort of framework under which to sort of to mount that. Engagement with local community visitors. So interaction is really important, and that we act appropriately. All right? So if you don't know the protocols, you might be running into some problems. We had an example recently where one of my groups actually, and I took a mea culpa to avoid negative perspectives on the research station. So a group of mine was staying at the research station. They went into sea country, and they went to a place that this person had been going for a number of years with this group of students, not realizing it was a green zone. One of the locals let them know it was a green zone, just a small subset of the students, it was a green zone, yet the students carried on their activity collecting, where they didn't have a permit to go into that area. So the local was trying to help them out, and these kids were from another country and not really versed in how to deal with folks, telling them about how to behave in an area. So they hadn't been briefed up enough to be able to respond appropriately. And the appropriate response was to cease the activity, remove yourself from the area, and seek advice. Right? This wasn't done, so the complaint escalated up to the top of Kayak, and then I started to explain some things to a range of folks. Right? And then I set in place some protocols to kind of make sure that didn't happen again through my unit. Yeah? And then that's been rolled out to Monterey Research Station as well. So that's what UQ wants out of it. What does Kayak want out of it? Enduring partnership with UQ. Right, we've had a partnership for a while. It's been fairly loose. They inherently want our support for basically their native title bids, and also there's a bid for basic biodiversity / cultural heritage, World Heritage listing for Moreton Bay, Walker. All right, so that's a great interest. Meaningful dialogue and collaboration. All right, meaningful is the key word here. All right, so the dialogue has to be substantive. All right, it's not just a casual conversation. Oh, by the way, or whatever. It's engaging over a period of time with a structured series of activities. Education and training opportunities for quantum local people. So in the same way that we want work integrated learning opportunities for our students, they also want opportunities for their people to understand and learn. Joint research, development projects. There's a whole bunch of things at the moment that are in the development plan for North Stradbroke Mine. So mining's closing down, and they've got this big economic package. We should have been engaged with that from 2010, but due to various problems over the big grey building, that didn't happen. We've only just really seriously got engaged in that process. So there's a bunch of things we're going to be doing in the future over there that are worthy of note. Now these are really these are my personal protocols, all right? Now, as I mentioned, when I'm working in Solomon Islands, I or a representative of mine will go over and meet with the elders and then ask them about their research priorities and how they would like us to work, and how, all those sort of structures go on. Hitherto, we've never had that here, and now we need to have that here, all right? So these are learnings from Solomon's brought over here. So I now send a copy of the teaching itineraries, and I make the coordinators of the various programs that I look after send copies of their teaching itinerary to Kayak and Colesma, Polesmar are the folks that run the rangers, right? And rangers are the people that want to engage. They're very interested in engaging, understanding what we teach and helping out with that in some respects. So because it's a complex thing with lots of people, they need to know that early. Invite participation with Polesmar Rangers. Jacob Martin's the head, a lovely man, and he's willing to listen. Inquire about potential touch points. So if you're going over there working, this is both research and for teaching, and think, I'm going to be going into a mangrove area to collect something or others or whatever, If it's in a green zone area, then you need to let these folks know so they understand what's going on. If you're visiting oyster leases, for example, that's a touch point. If you're visiting certain important cultural sites, even though your work might not be on cultural matters, because you're accessing those sites, that's a potential touch point. So you need to be aware of those and do like a risk analysis on those. So basically the research one, same as those, I'd shorten up the consultation time in scale, in respect to the scale of your activity. If you're taking 55 students over there, that's a big, noisy footprint, all right? And lots of folks will know you need to have that rounded out. If you're going over doing a little bit of sampling plankton or something or other, it's much luxurious. So risk assessment, and the other thing, in the same way now that we give back to communities in the Solomons by giving them reports straight away about issues. Now obviously they don't want to be snowed under by lots of scientific papers, but it might help just to give them a synopsis, or at least provide a list of activities you're doing, research sort of outcomes, and then ask them if they'd like any of those amplified. And just a short amplification would satisfy, I would think, and then they can follow that up later. So, challenge for discussion. So yesterday I was in Australia, right, I'm in Jerewan. I was part of a project funded by the Goodman Foundation, which was called Censusing the Aliens. It's about finding out whether invasive species are on the shores of Moreton Bay. All right, and I was there with students from UQ, QUT, Griffith University, Griffith University professor and myself were part of this team. All right, it was run out of Gympie, Dunwich, at the Moreton Bay Research Station. We visited rocky shores there and surveyed. Yeah. Now we had sent our permits off to Kayak and Polesmar. We'd invited the participation of Kayak and Polesmar. We provided food enough for rangers to come down and have a bite of pizza. Yet none showed up. Right, and I saw Jacob Martin on the ferry on the way back, and we had a quick chat. They've been very busy doing a bunch of other things, but there's a massive gap in our ability to encourage participation. Right? And so we need to build stronger links with individuals to make them feel comfortable to come down into those sorts of environments, which is a very sciencey kind of environment. Yeah? So there's some barriers there in building confidence. So maintaining dialogues are important. There are long-term monitoring program opportunities. So LTFPs, all right? We need to be working out what do we need to be monitoring in the area. Things like invasive species to be sensible. Things like puhaka, that's the rover word for sea cucumbers and things like this. Be aware and get involved as kayak updated protocols, right? So we'll start distributing those around. There'll be a structure for those. Dollars, we need to put some dollars into this to actually enable some of this exchange of ideas to go on. I think two things we need to do is protect Gympie shores. Lots and lots of people visit the shores of Dunwich there for a range of things. These are culturally important sites. There's a native fish trap over there, or indigenous fish trap, and there's also lots of resources that we kind of wander around and rip. We go and pick Quampi up, yeah? Go and I did an experiment last year on Quampi filtering rates, yeah? So these are important indigenous resources, which is lifting off the shore and running experiments on, and then tossing away afterwards. And then beyond the 1 mile. So if you go past 1 mile to 2 mile, I mean, those of you who know the geography of Gympie or Dunwich, then you leave the kind of western kind of like township, and you get to an area where traditional owners are living in fairly similar circumstances to quite a while ago, all right? And things like water quality will be an issue there. Mosquito-borne diseases will be an issue there. All the sorts of problems and challenges, all right, with low income and these sorts of things, all the sorts of challenges that we see in the Solomon Islands, to a certain extent, occur over there. So there are opportunities again to work with local communities at their invitation to address some of the issues that are important for their community. So beyond the 1 mile is the other Okay, so going the extra yard, I suppose it would be good. Anyway, that's me done, I think. If there are any questions. Any questions? Yeah.
Hi, great presentation. How does the native title in the area impact development, like Toondah Harbour? Like, how much of a say do they get in those? Or,
No, Redland City Council done a really sneaky thing about excising that site from consideration by a whole range of people. Certainly, Kayak are really against it.
Yeah.
But Kayak Kayak are torn a little bit, and they want the economic development, they want the benefits to flow with the economic development in Gumbi. To do that, they're going to put in a big ferry terminal. So where the current terminal is at the moment, that's going to be a big ferry terminal, right? They're going to have a cultural precinct associated with that, and they're going to have some more office spaces on the sand loading jetty, to the north of the current entrance. So to have that infrastructure, you need to have things servicing it. Those are large boats bringing large numbers of people over. So there's going to need to be some infrastructure put in Toondah Harbour. I would rather see the reverse of what they're doing. If they want to put in infrastructure to support that, then go inland and don't go out into the sea, particularly in wader habitat that's Ramsar listed. And how can we have an international agreement the Commonwealth Government has signed up to and intend to protect, and the local government goes and snips a bit out of it and says, don't worry about that, So, yeah. So, Kayak are in an interesting position. They want the advantages of development, but they're trying to push back against the Toondah Harbour, actually. I'm happy, if anybody's interested, you probably found my email. If you want to see the set of the protocols and the memorandum of understanding and that sort of stuff, then let me know, and I'll post them around. The MOU is still subject to interpretation, so Val Coombs, who's the chair of Kayak, is actually, and this might be, I'm not sure what Mike's going to talk about next week, but I just heard yesterday that Val's actually going to base herself at the Moreton Bay Research Station 1 day a week ongoing, which is terrific, because that'll increase the amount of exchange of ideas and trust. And Val is a very strong woman in terms of leading for her people. All right, so I'm very excited by that. So this is a changing space, and we all need to be aware of it. Yes.
I think I'll certainly chase up about some of those protocols and things to learn from. There's and maybe, are you based in Brisbane?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
So
Third floor, second floor.
Okay. I'm ignorant in this space.
That's all right. That's all right.
I'll just flag. We've got a really interesting project that's just emerging with the Secretariat of Pacific Communities.
Right.
And now it's dealing with the elite within the Secretariat of Pacific Communities. It's it's dealing with the scientists, many of them internationals, and all the rest of it. Mm-hmm. And in that project, I don't see any avenue that will be working sort of on country in a traditional sense, or with large portions of the population. So it's nonetheless, I'm still the white expert coming in to tell them how to do it. Now, so we've got a brilliant relationship with the folks we've been dealing with within SPC.
Right.
But I think the project, one we'll be pulling together. I'm currently pulling together a team from across the UQ of sort of experts from very different disciplines to feed into that process. But the project overall's developing a new strategic plan for SPC. So SPC is the Secretariat of Pacific Communities. It's the peak scientific body of the Pacific Island nations, got 26 member states. So, if possible, maybe there's that we can chat down the track and get some of your advice, and even flagging people who might be relevant around UQ who've both got the sort of the disciplinary expertise to inform a strategic plan in their discipline, but also with some knowledge of the Pacific is going to fill our gaps and all the rest of it. Anyway, so
yeah, I've got a PhD student actually submitting some data from SBC on the tune. So
brilliant.
So
well, I think that's
helpful.
One of the things that'll come out of the project, I think, is they've got these enormous data sets.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of sort of data collecting going on in SPC.
Yeah, that's right.
But they don't do data analysis.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I could find across there 10 different divisions. There's the fisheries, I think, has actually puts out policy briefings. So the data collecting has been designed for use in policy, and they'll do something about it. But most of them just sit there just collecting the data. The number of folks I know at UQ that would want to have a collaborative relationship and then develop, think of the research that you could do with people who've got good analysis skills, with the folks there who've got the local knowledge and the data. So that's where you're hoping to take it. But we've got to get the right people on board.
SBC have been monitoring sort of tuna at Noro, which is on New Georgia, which is the main salt tuna canning factory. And they got a problem with a thing called mushy tuna, where the tuna breaks down for some reason after it's caught, and they don't know, they can't predict this until it's been through the first stage of processing. And mushy tuna is not even cat food, right? Versus a high-end product that tuna can be. So they're very keen to work out why it is. SBC's been gathering a lot of data, but as you say, they've not done any analysis on it, so that's where we're kind of headed.
And I think there's even in little areas, I'm getting sort of hints that there's little areas of kind of caginess about that data too. In some cases.
I've tried to get that data. It's really hard.
Is it?
Even with support from FFA and from like the relationship between WCP, Western Central Pacific Tuna, I always forget that name.
Right.
And FFA and SPC is like, it's really complicated.
Right.
Even if you have support, I had support from all the three parties and still couldn't get it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we haven't got the data yet. We're like hoping to get the data. So, thanks for coming. Cheers.
To what extent is the memorandum of understanding sort of being institutionalized versus just driven by yourself?
Because
well, not driven by myself.
Yeah.
So it was a surprise to me. And then trying to find out what was in it was difficult to do. I initially was handed a hard copy by a friend. So it was really sort of secret squirrel stuff.
Yeah, right.
And it's only, I was in contact with Val Coombs about the incident I mentioned a month or two ago, and basically asking her about what the structure protocols she wanted to adopt. And she said, well, I've got to have more meetings with the senior management at UQ to determine that. So while the MOU had been signed, still the details of how we would operate hadn't been agreed. Yeah? So it's really just being aware of that space when you go into quantum country, basically.
But the problem we've got there is that the time scales that people are operating on are so vastly different. So like there's all of these research ethic things that no one's like going to argue against, right? Like we all agree that these are important things. And then there are time scales and deadlines for students that don't align. And in our group, we've had just fail because we couldn't find someone to contact with enough time for a student to complete the project.
So we have this problem. I have this problem. Now, I don't do any work in Moreton Bay at the moment. I did my PhD in Moreton Bay. I love to work in Moreton Bay. I was in Moreton Bay yesterday looking at little whiting in pools and juvenile shrimp and intermediate-sized whiting migrating down the shore, pit feeding, and love. But it takes me 9 months to get an application through for a Moreton Bay marine permit. All right. So one of the things we're doing at the moment from CMS/Moreton Bay Foundation is actually pushing on government to shorten that process by accreditation. So if you go and do research on the Great Barrier Reef, if you do low impact stuff, low impact classified as what any Joe Bloggs is able to do, basically in the bay, then you can, we're going for institutional accreditation supported by the Department of Environment. And I've spoken to the DDG and DG about this and said, look, you've got to fix this. We're not able to get student projects in Moreton Bay. And so the time of decision making is problematic, and we're trying to fix it.
No, that's right.
We had a thing the other day where the activity we did yesterday has to be covered by a marine park permit. So we sent off inviting through Qualsmar the rangers. They said, okay, to the organisers, which is Griffith University, where's your permit? You're working in Moreton Bay. These take a long time to get. It's like 2 weeks before it went out, right? And then so I start bashing around. They asked me for advice, and I go, well, let's try and work through the research stations permit system, which we're able to do, send to them, tick box, away you go. But yeah, you've got to have the permits. So if anybody has any problems, then they're welcome to contact me. Responsiveness from Kayak and Polesma, they're very busy people, right? These folks are always, if they're not out sitting at a desk doing something, they're out trying to backburn to prevent fires. And these are busy people. So if you run into a brick wall, I know the head of Kayak and also Polesma very well, and I'm sure I can get a message through to accelerate something or sort of problem out. And the other person is Mike Node, who's director of the Montpellier Research Station, so he'll be up for you. You can ask him about that next week when you have a chat with him. All square? Wunderbar. So remember the pizzas, free pizzas for students who want to come along and join the Marine Bank.
In 6 minutes, so you might as well just go now.
You may as well just go now because it's just, what time is it now? You may as well just wander down that way and eat pizza, so I'm sure.